It's funny now that I think about LCOE becoming the ultimate driver in almost everything we talk about now, but it wasn't originally. At the end of the day, it was the price that solar project could sell for back 8 years ago. And now we're really trying to figure out how we drive that levelized cost of electricity lower. And the dialogue even changed around that.
LCOE was something you'd read in an analyst report.
Exactly.
That's what it was, right?
Okay, welcome to Renewables Chat. The goal here is to have a good discussion about renewables and software, what's going on, what's the latest news, how it impacts renewables. Hopefully people get some information about the do's and don'ts of renewables. New people to the industry learn a little bit. People that have been around a while learn a little bit more. And with that in mind, I'd like to bring in the ever-present Etienne into the conversation, who is the CEO of PowerHub. Etienne, welcome.
Thank you very much, James. Thanks for having me, even remotely, as you can see here. So great to be here.
Yeah, this is an exciting chat because what we want to start off and talk about is the origin of PowerHub and how we came to be. This is an interesting thing because it's almost 8 years to the day that this happened. I believe it was a cold and stormy night. No. It was a conference in Chicago.
It was cold though. It was like November in Chicago, so it was cold.
It was very cold. So, and it's interesting because we've never really talked about it from this side. We've joked about how PowerHub started a lot, but what I'd like to hear is, how did it start from your end? What's your view of this whole thing as how it came to be? From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. So we were running a consultancy, as you know, working in renewables, and we knew that had an expiry date. So it's kind of funny to run a business that is going to end. Factually, right? You're working on regulations that have an end date, so you can continue working for so long, but you're working on a declining business, which is not that interesting. So the real onset of this was like, okay, so how do we continue growing? And then there's basically 4 paths, right? So you do what we're doing, but in another industry. So you're kind of stretching, you're doing the same things like professional services, consultancy work, but do it for like the rail industry. We were looking at that, domestic content for rail and aviation and things like that. That was very motivating, let's be honest.
Planes, trains, and solar cells?
Yeah, something like that. It's a great movie with John Candy there. There's a second path. It's like, let's just do something completely different. So not even same clients or same market, but let's do something completely different. And that was always kind of part of the radar, but not the most compelling vision, because then we should just be starting a whole new business to do that. Then there was the third path, which is, okay, how can we serve our existing clients in a bit of a different way? So how can we provide gain from what we've built and keep going that way? And that was really kind of the view that we can offer more in renewables beyond kind of the regulatory consulting angle that we had at the time. And that's where we were really kind of brainstorming, like, what else can we provide the market? What needs are there? And that's really the key things. And I think that was kind of the conversation we were having at lunch 8 years ago, is really around that. So I was actually, funny enough, going around having these chats with people that I know from far and near, like, so what's missing, what's needs, what are the challenges that you see in the market right now? And that's really where it started.
Yeah. And it's funny because given the context of it, this wasn't like a boardroom we were sitting in. We were literally in the food court of the convention center in Chicago, surrounded by people just having this type of chat. Like, what's really going on in the world? How are they facing? What are the problems? It was a very interesting experience because at the time myself too, I was literally just consulting and filling gaps for people that needed things for that lunch. And and then when did we really actually start building this? Do you remember you went out and had to have some chats?
Yeah, so this was like October, November 2013.
Yeah.
So as you said, like 8 years to the day, give or take a few. So I think we really started kind of figuring it out, right? Not necessarily building anything, but trying to say, okay, what is there? Let's start investing in finding it and finding out if this makes sense. And I think that was January, probably 2014 at that stage.
Yep, probably
Where over the course of, let's say, October to December, we kind of refined the concept a little bit and thought about it a bit more and say, okay, well, this has the most legs of the ideas that we had at the time, right? So
you mean like the best of the worst ideas you had, sort of thing?
Exactly, right. But ultimately, like, the funny thing about, like, there's the myth about entrepreneurship that it takes the brilliant idea or the aha moment or whatever. And it's really about execution at the end of the day. So that was really kind of that, we say, that first part of 2014. And like, how do we execute? How do we operationalize? How do we refine this into something? Because I think we presented the first MTP to the market a year later. So I'm going to say October 2014.
Yeah, somewhere in there. It was Intersolar, wasn't it?
No,
in the hotel. I remember us being camped out in the hotel lobby.
Yeah, but I think that was in Vegas at SPI again.
Yeah.
So a year later, we had our first version of the product, which was there. So we refined, we focused on certain needs. We decided purposefully to kind of move away, not focus on monitoring. So live data, and because there was just too many people doing that at that point, and we needed to focus more on the other aspects of asset management. So the commercial, the financial. Obviously, we had a regulatory slant because of the work we had previously been doing, risk management, those type of topics. And like we remember, we've got this third party software developer to build the first prototype. And after we present that first prototype, that's
we got a lot of really good response from the market when we took that prototype out to the market. I remember we talked to a lot of bankers, a lot of people, and they really thought the idea had some legs. And then it was right after that we hired our first employee, who's still with us.
I know, and I think we've hired her in October 2014. So just after presenting that first version, and after that we hired our first real architect, who told us, well, it's great that you have something to show, but it's not scalable. It won't be able to onboard any clients, those type of things. So we went through the first of many, I'm going to say, re-engineerings over the years, but that was helpful. But it really started with like a PowerPoint deck that we were pitching, right? So these are the types of services, the types of data, this is the value prop, and so on. And we're going to see all our current consulting clients and so on, say, hey, this is the idea. Do you buy in? Does that make sense for you? And those type of things. So doing all that pre-market validation before going to market. Because the last thing you want to do is just say, hey, well, I have an idea, I have a view of the market, and you don't validate it. And that's an ongoing challenge, right? This ongoing validation still happens today, right?
For sure.
You have to keep doing that always.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Some of the crazy things and worst mistakes we've made and best decisions we've made. What would you think is one of the best decisions we've made over the last 8 years in how we've evolved as a company?
Best decision in 8 years. Wow. That's probably moving offices during COVID. But
you're probably right.
I think those smarter business decisions that we've made. But kidding aside, I think focus is always the best decision. Right? I think one of the smart decisions we're making is actually right now, where we're going towards really focusing on the problems, not so much on the product, which is kind of counterintuitive at times. Well, but we're building a product, but no, the product is just a means to an end. For people to solve problems that they have. So I know we've been working hard this last year, especially, or I'm going to say 18 months really, and changing that mindset a little bit with it internally as well, and on how the product looks and feels and so on. So ultimately that's going to go out to kind of our new version that's coming out, which you can really look at a suite of products more than a big platform.
That target real key solutions, right? Like, and not like a feature. It's from this is the problem I have day to day. How do I do that better, faster, easier, and get more out of it.
That sounds like a great Daft Punk song. That's true. Maybe that should be kind of the jingle for PowerHub, like faster, better, stronger, right? I don't know. We can probably afford that, but that's a whole other discussion. So I think that would be kind of one of the things. It's kind of it's not so much of a pivot as a big evolution, where there was a thesis. And if you look at the market feedback that we got over the years and what people need to do and so on, and that's us listening more than anything. And I think that's great in itself. And mistakes, we've done plenty around the way, from architectural mistakes to waiting too long to put something out in the market and not getting feedback early enough. Then I'm sure we can do plenty of episodes just on mistakes that we've done along the way, but that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to think, if you met someone who was going to take your road tomorrow, they're about to jump into something, they're about to transition to something in software, what is the advice you'd give them?
The funny thing is to try to define success. What does that mean? Like, why are you doing this? It's kind of funny to start there. There's tons of rags to riches stories and software and those types of things. And if that's why you're doing something, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. So what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to have an impact? We're trying to drive renewables forward. And with our small part of the equation here in some way, shape, or form, that's always been kind of the why behind it. That's our part to play type of thing. So that informs decisions along the way. And also try to define what success means like. Is success mass adoption? Is success being EBIT positive? Is it growing like crazy? Is it having a big, define what that means for you as well. And that's kind of funny to look at what success looks like, but it all frames the discussion a little bit. Because are you going for something that's VC backed or high burn type of rate to kind of grow fast, exit? Or are you trying to build something small but beautiful or grandiose and like Salesforce? I don't know, right? So I think for me that's always an interesting stop and think about the why and what success looks like. And that's sometimes counterintuitive to kind of think about both things. And then the most important learning probably that I have from PowerHub is look at the timing. Like there's great ideas that have poor timing, as an example, and that can destroy a company and so on. So looking and validating the timing aspect of what you're trying to do. I remember in the early years being on my proverbial soapbox a lot, say, hey guys, you need to talk about these facets of how you're managing your asset. Hey, this is important. So it doesn't really matter what you think. It's the timing component as well. The business model can follow. Yeah, the business model can follow. The team can follow. There's all these type of things that the product can follow. But ultimately, there's product market fit. That's important. But there's idea timing fit, idea market fit as well from a timing perspective. And I think for me, that's the most important learning that I have. Like now, like I help sometimes other startups and things like that. And that's probably the first question that I try to validate. It's like, is the timing right for the problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah. Are you just a problem looking for a solution at this point in time?
Or a solution
looking for a problem. Right?
Exactly.
And whether people are ready to accept it, right? Like, you're right. I remember the first few years, all we were doing is waving our hands going, look at us over here. We're OpEx. We're OpEx. Pay attention to us. We're important to the business model, right? Where everybody was so obsessed with bringing down the cost of renewables and focused on the CapEx side of things. So, but I mean, as you can see now, we're getting a lot of traction into the OpEx side as the CapEx come down so far. Where's the only place really to trim and save money to really drive, your cheaper levelized cost of electricity, and that's in the OpEx. That's where we're at now.
And still, it's the battle between existing assets and new assets, right? New assets are always shinier, more interesting, more novel, and the older assets, well, they're older assets. So, but that's where you actually, if you can get a real return on your investment by working on these assets, because, most of the time you're getting paid a lot more money per kilowatt hour, but there's great opportunities in both sides. And it's about how you focus at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, focus is probably one of those key things that we talk about all the time, and focusing on things. And I'd bring forward as one of those things that in some of the earlier versions of product we did not have as much of. And I think that's something we've learned a lot about. What about something else you've learned either about the industry or about, software in general that you didn't know before diving in headfirst into this?
Oh wow, the things that I didn't know. I should write a book. It'd be a very boring book, mind you, but could be an interesting path there. But there are type of things that you assume. Like I think for me, I've always assumed that kind of the development guys, the finance guys, and the long-term operational guys, and the construction guys always talked, and we're super No, it's a fair assumption to have. Like we were working a lot with developers, and things are transitioning to the EPCs and so on, and there was okay conversations there. And then you think of long-term operations. For me, that was one of the bigger shocks, that it's really like huge silos and in a lot of the companies, and the financial model drives this, the development plan drives that, the electrical drawing, and things are.
There's a lack of conversation between the various groups.
And alignment, I guess, at times. And I thought that was always for me, that was kind of an aha moment, because I was used to talking to the developers, not to the operators and the asset managers. So for me, that was a big evolution as well. And who you talk to, how do you engage with them, what's important, and that changed also over time. So for me, that was a big learning for sure. Is you'd expect everybody to speak the same language, but it isn't.
Yeah. And it's interesting, even some of the acronyms and things people use at different stages in the life cycle of a project become different, and they blend over each other. I mean, it's funny now that I think about LCOE becoming the ultimate driver in almost everything we talk about now, but it wasn't originally. At the end of the day, it was the price that solar project could sell for back 8 years ago. And now we're really trying to figure out how we drive that levelized cost of electricity lower. And the dialogue even changed around that.
LCOE was something you'd read in an analyst report.
Exactly.
That's what it was, right? It's and it's kind of crazy to look at how fast this come. Like I was listening to the Premier of Quebec on an interview, I think yesterday or the day before, answering the question, like, do we need more hydropower in Quebec? And his answer, well, kind of the LCOE of new hydro is about 9 cents per kilowatt hour, whereas new wind is right now about 6. So what do you think makes sense? And I was like, this is...
Wow. It's got the politician level? We've won.
No, I know. Well, that's impressive, right? And that's in a province here in Quebec where it's 100% renewable energy to start with, right? So the discourse is still on, okay, well, on top of things, it's still very cost competitive. And that's a driver, because they just signed massive export agreements with Massachusetts, with New York, as examples. So we're helping other states become greener as well, which is kind of pretty cool when you look at it. But we should probably have transmission to Ontario, but that's a whole other debate in itself.
It feels like we could dive into like the discussion around why electricity prices and why electricity is so complicated in North America and all these different exchanges and transference in like a number of other chats. But we're actually out of time now. So wow. It's amazing how quickly a little chat can go and end. With that in mind, I hope everybody really enjoyed and learned a lot. If not, well, we had a great time talking.
Exactly. But it's always interesting to think about this. Thanks for the questions. I haven't thought about that these details in a while, but always try to have a lens of what do you learn from it and what can you apply to the next thing or help other people's apply. So I hope there's a tidbit of knowledge there. And always, this is just a preface for the next chat, I guess.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll join us on the next chat. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, James.